I am Iskandar Kaon, born of Prospero. In the Low Gothic of the Terran Urals region, you would speak Iskandar as Secondar and Kaon as Cain. The Thousand Sons know me as Kaon the Black for my sins against our bloodline. My War Master's forces name me Kingbreaker, the mage who brought Magus the Red to his knees. I am the war leader of the Kar-Shahan, a lord of the Ezekarion, and a brother to Ezekiel Abaddon. I shed blood with him at the dawn of the Long War, when the first of us stood armoured in black beneath the rising red sun. For a lot of people, I think that passage was quite eyebrow-raising, or dare I say it, controversial even. For the most part, we are told that the demon Primarchs are these godlike figures on the battlefield, and so to learn that Magus the Red, the Primarch of the Thousand Sons, one of the strongest sorcerers in the galaxy, was outmatched by a Space Marine, and not just a Space Marine, one of his own sons. How can this have possibly happened? It is worth noting that Iskandar is incredibly powerful. In the Thousand Sons, he's second only to Ahriman in terms of power scale. However, his gene father is able to bring planets into reality, swell to the size of a titan, burn every atom within Vulcan at once. So how, in the love of the Dark Gods, did a sorcerer of the Black Legion pull this off? Well, Aaron Dembski-Bowden has told us that we will see this showdown in the final Black Legion novel, but I think I figured it out. I believe that Iskandar Kaon will discover the true name of Magus the Red. Now, this is no simple moniker. Magnus's true name is not Magus the Red. It's not even Magus did nothing wrong or anything like that. But he has a demonic name, because when he ascended to demonhood, he became a part of the god Tzeentch, and so he does share in the drawbacks that all demons share in. Names are incredibly powerful in Warhammer 40K. Grey Knight names are actually the antithesis of a demon name, and this allows them to have power over that demon. Constantine Valdor is able to learn demon names when he stabs them with the Apollonian Spear, and again that grants him power over those demons should he see them again. Luther, the enemy of the Dark Angels, in his madness would cry out demon names, and these were noted down and memorized by the chapter masters of the Dark Angels, who again use these demon names to overpower these demons should they come upon them. Now, the problem with the demon Primarchs is that even if you did learn their name, if you tried to say it, it may kill you. So we see this happen in the book Slaves to Darkness. This book takes place towards the end of the Horus heresy, and at this point Horus is actually wounded following his fight against Leman Russ. However, this will be resolved later on. But the traitor forces are preparing for the final assault on Terra. However, they are missing two key components, and those components are Fulgrim and Angron. Both Fulgrim and Angron have ascended to demonhood, and the problem with that is they have kind of lost all interest in the war. Angron is building massive skull thrones and killing things, and Fulgrim is in Slaaneish's palace and doing whatever it is that people do in Slaaneish's palace. When we actually see him in the novel, he's actually hanging out with the demon Nakari. Perturabo is tasked with going to fetch Angron, and Lorgar decides to go and get Fulgrim. However, Lorgar has also decided, very dangerously, to be Lorgar. He is the traitor's traitor, and at this point in the Horus heresy, he has decided that Horus Lupercal is no longer a fitting war master, and would like to take his place. Knowing that Horus would beat him to a pulp, he decides to use Fulgrim as a pawn to dispatch Horus so that he can then take his rightful place as the new War Master of Chaos. In order to do this, he decides to use Fulgrim's true name. However, the book seems to imply that Lorgar cannot do this himself because Fulgrim would see it coming, and so he uses one of his sons, Zardu Lyak. A void opened in Lyak's mind. Words unfolded into blackness, spreading into strings of syllables that reached past language and into eternity. It was not language, not as mortals could speak it. It was a name. A single name spoken by nightmares beyond the door of sleep. On and on it went, curling like a serpent. He felt his soul shriek, but the fragments of knowledge were bursting out from where they had been seeded inside him. Each of them was a part of the name, a slice of the word that pushed up from the void and into his throat. The first syllable coughed into the air in a splatter of blood. The stones of the piazza shook. Fulgrim twisted as though struck, and now time was winding slowly as the syllables sliced through the instants. The crowd howled in rage. Lorgar's mace was in his hand, lit with lightning. His halo was flame. A pulse of telepathic command snapped out. The guns of the word-bearers came up, fingers on triggers. All of these things happened in the split second it took Fulgrim to rear up and turn. He grew as he moved, faster than a lightning strike, body swelling with anger. The sky flashed to black. Light became blinding. Lightning cloaked his muscle, freezing into plates of armor. Curved swords manifested in his fists as they rose. His eyes fastened on Lyak, burning with fury. Lyak could feel the gaze passing through his flesh and armor, stripping back the wards written on his skin and shivering through his body. The mask was glowing white hot against his face. He felt small, an insect flying into a thunderstorm. Fulgrim lashed forwards, the word-bearers opened fire, the crowd charged. Lorgar leapt to block the path of his demonic brother as Lyak felt another molten, writhing sound force its way onto his tongue, and the next syllable of Fulgrim's true name split the air. Fulgrim came forwards, wings unfolded from the air behind his shoulders. He grew as he moved, a blur of colour and edges. Behind him, Nikari began to rear off the dais, flesh rippling, its face a mask of delighted rage. They would not survive long. Even without the transcendent power of Fulgrim, they were facing a city, a world. They would die here, and their souls would be taken and spun on looms of agony for eternity. The only way for him to survive was for him to speak the name that was tearing its way out of his mind. Lorgar had known that, he realized. That is why he had only brought a small force. He had lulled Fulgrim into vulnerability. He had misdirected his demon brother's attention by hiding his true weapon behind the shield of Lyak's mask and in the void within his soul. And it had worked, for there was still time for the sword-bearer to die before the blow fell. Gunfire spat from the word-bearers. Explosions tore into Fulgrim's flesh. Blood scattered into the air, burning to indigo smoke. Telekinetic force whipped out, plucked 3 word-bearers from their feet, and crushed them like overripe fruit. The invisible force lashed into the next warrior and met a dome of golden light. A blinding flash stripped the air of colour. Lorgar stepped forwards, his scepter at his side, his hand raised. Fulgrim leapt into the air with a snap of his coils, psychic force shrieking around him. Curved swords, a blurred halo as they swept down to strike. Lorgar raised his scepter, and shadows unfolded from him, spreading his shape across the ground and air. Fulgrim's sword swept down, and the shadows rose to meet them. Lyak's sight went black as more segments of the true name clawed into the air. He was sweating blood, shivering, screaming with a choking throat. "You wanted the power of the gods," said a spiteful voice in his mind. "Now taste its truth." "No," came another voice, rising from the void where the true name had coiled in his soul. "I never wanted anything of the false gods. He felt his knees fold and the staff fall from his fingers. He could hear the roar of voices and the howling of reality. His sight blinked back into focus. Another link in the infernal chain of Fulgrim's demonic name snapped into sound. Fulgrim flinched as he twisted and reared. Lorgar struck, perfumed blood and pearlescent scales tore away as the spiked scepter smashed through armor. Lyak vomited a stream of sounds. Fulgrim fell back, shivering, shrinking, and Lorgar was pressing his attack, hammering his brother back and down. Lyak could feel the last syllable of the name sitting in the depths of his soul like a red-hot coal. It was so close that he could taste it. It tasted of honey and raw meat. He could not do it though. Grey armour. He could see grey armour, and feel the heat of a pyre as the creed of the false gods poured into the night sky on tongues of flame. "We burn the past to make the future," said a thought. Pain spiraled in its wake. Echoes and images clung to his mind like a bruise. He felt the last syllable rise to his mouth. The vision of battle snapped back into motion. Sheets of light were scything through the air, and the throng of bodies was a bloody wave. Fulgrim reared from the ground, swords in hand, bloody wings a hood behind his head. Blood glossed the crimson of Lorgar's armour. His eyes were sunken in his face. He turned, dragging the head of his mace behind him, like a comet pulling its tail of flame through the night sky. Fulgrim met the blow with crossed swords, but the force of it cannoned him backwards. Blood, so dark that it was purple, streaked the ground. Nakari bellowed. Until now, Fulgrim's consort had left the demigods to their fight, but now it came to the bloody ground in a blur. The exalted demon had sloughed off its previous shape. Coils of thick flesh lay on the ground in folds. Its pudgy mockery of Fulgrim's face was gone. Lorgar straightened to meet the exalted demon, hand raised as though in a piecemeal greeting. Fulgrim stirred at his feet, bloody, blades and wings rising. Lyak spoke the last syllable of the name. Zardu Lyak is actually a very powerful sorcerer. His sacrifice during the Siege of Terra is actually the sacrifice that allows demons to manifest on the birth world of humanity. So he is a very strong psyker, and it appears to be a necessary component of this ritual because, as you saw in that passage, it took a massive toll on the sorcerer. He was spitting blood, he was going blind, he was having headaches, and it is very clear to me that therefore it's not as easy as just speaking a name. Additionally, there's more background behind how hard it was for Lorgar to pull this off. So it wasn't as easy as just Lorgar learning the name himself and just saying it to Fulgrim, because Fulgrim's now a powerful psyker. He would have been able to see that coming. We find out in the novel that they go through a very lengthy process in order to hide the name in the void within Zardu Layak's soul. So they actually have a horde of cultists, and each one of them holds a little bit of Fulgrim's name. Zardu Layak actually pulls parts of the name out of all of their minds, and therefore that allows him to kind of speak the name. It was a very difficult thing to pull off, but it does work. So after that passage, Fulgrim does fall under the sway of Lorgar essentially by proxy, and Lorgar prepares to have Fulgrim slay the War Master Horus Lupercal. This doesn't work out as well as you can imagine. So in the end, Zardu Layak and the witch Acte, who's also working with them at this stage, end up siding with Horus Lupercal, and Horus does indeed end up beating Lorgar to a pulp. And that is actually the reason you don't see Lorgar during the Siege of Terra. Horus only just lets Lorgar live, but he does tell Lorgar that if he sees him again, he'll probably kill him. Thankfully for Lorgar, Horus, of course, does die fighting against the Emperor. But Lorgar nearly pulled this off. And so I wanted to talk about this today because I think it is kind of my go-to reaction to the question of how can Iskandar Kaon dominate the demon Primarch of the Thousand Suns, a sorcerer who is far stronger than he. I think somehow Iskandar is going to learn the true name of his demonic gene father, and he's going to be able to use this to actually force Magnus the Red to bend the knee to Abaddon. And we know that this does take a massive toll on Iskandar. So one of the things that he notes in the novel later on is that Iskandar's armor is kind of melted into his skin. Now, this isn't too uncommon. A lot of Chaos Space Marines do have their armor kind of morphed into them. If you've ever seen a Chaos Space Marine model, you'll know what I mean. But Iskandar says very specifically that in his attempt to break the king, force Magnus the Red to bend the knee to Abaddon, he actually suffers this as a consequence. His armor kind of melts into his arm, so he's got like golden arms basically in the novel. This is actually matching up very well for me with what we see in Slaves to Darkness, because for Zardu Layak, it was also a massive task to speak the name of the Demon Primarch. But true names are not the only reason that Demon Primarchs seem to lose so often. In fact, there are two other answers to Demon Primarchs that crop up quite a lot. So the first is actually intervention from the Emperor, and now there is a constant intervention from the Emperor in play for both Guilliman and the Lion. That is their war gear that was gifted to them from the Master of Mankind. So Guilliman has the Emperor's sword and the Lion has the Emperor's shield. This is a huge deal. We see how powerful these artifacts are in their fights against the Demon Primarchs. One of the greater demons of Nurgle actually tells Mortarion he could be permanently killed by the Emperor's sword, and Angron, a Demon Primarch who's so strong he can basically destroy planets, just bounces off the Emperor's shield when he fights against Lionel Johnson in the Arcs of Omen series. This wargear is so incredibly strong that it has kind of shifted the balance towards the Loyalist Primarch's favour, because the Loyalists now constantly have this boost that the Demon Primarchs don't get. And in this respect, I think that I'm starting to kind of view the Loyalist Primarchs as having like a patron god in their own way, because they do have literal gifts from a god-type being. Another thing to look at is how the Loyalist Primarchs are starting to understand more about themselves. So the biggest example we've seen this happen in is Corvus Corax understanding that he's actually all warp stuff underneath his skin, and this allows him to easily go toe-to-toe with Lorgar, a Demon Primarch of Chaos Undivided. Something that we would not expect any Primarch to do beforehand. But actually he's unlocked this kind of raw power within himself, and that allows him to match a big golden demon. And even Guilliman and the Lion are starting to notice that their abilities are being enhanced. So in the Dark Imperium trilogy, Guilliman has actually started to wonder, is this because people believe his father is a god? Is that why he is getting so much stronger? Is that why he's able to stand toe-to-toe against all these horrific demons? Because if they believe his father's a god, and that's had a very real impact, it's had a measurable impact on the galaxy, does that mean he has become more powerful too? And the Lion, of course, has his forest walking ability, which allows him to traverse great distances. And so all of the Loyalist Primarchs, when they come back, they are going to have more abilities than we've ever seen them have before. So the next thing to talk about in terms of the Demon Primarchs, which is a very strong counter to them in the lore, is blanks or psychic nulls, pariahs. These are beings that have a negative influence on the warp, and so they weaken all the psychers around them, but they also weaken demons around them, because demons are all kind of psychers in their own, well, that's kind of true. Demons are all kind of psychers in their own way, and all the Demon Primarchs are powerful psychers, and they are, of course, based in the warp. So something having a negative reflection in the warp weakens their ability near them. Guilliman and Leman Russ are able to use this when fighting against Magnus the Red, and it has a significant impact. But increasingly, I kind of worry about this plot device, because all of the Demon Primarchs should be becoming aware of this. And so it's probably getting a bit old to continually see Magnus get kind of stomped because someone throws a Sister of Silence at him. But yes, historically, it's been the strong counter to the Demon Primarchs. Thank you so much to everybody who joined me on the channel. If you do like this kind of content, please do consider joining the channel, and you get access to the Discord and extra content. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Demon Primarchs. They do seem to be losing a lot of the time. There's obviously a very kind of practical reason here, which is that if Lionel Johnson or Gilliman lose, they die. But we're not here for practical reasons. We're here for magical, warp, and emperor related reasons. But thank you so much for watching. I